catching up time, and Cheryl Warsama is joining us. You know her from Vivimus. She's our resident psychologist, and she's going to be helping us get our minds into a state where we can survive yet another week of work or family stuff or you know what? It sticks in my mind, Cheryl. Every time you come in, 6-month checkup.
6 months, absolutely. You need your 6-month checkup. Yeah.
And all I keep saying in my mind every time is 6-month checkup. We need to have that 6 months. Are we getting our 6-month mental checkup? We do it for the dentist, we do it at the doctor. Are we doing it for our minds and our psyche and just making sure we're in shape? And we're not.
Absolutely. It's time for your 6-month checkup. If you haven't made your appointment anywhere, it doesn't have to be with me, but with a psychologist somewhere in Dubai, make sure you have your 6-month mental health checkup.
I had a friend, and I'm not going to give any details,
okay,
but I have a friend who we were actually talking yesterday, and just so much going on. And this friend said, I need to go talk to someone.
Yeah.
And I got this big smile on my face, because it was just like, wow, here is somebody who is in tune with what's going on in their life, and they realize that they need to have a conversation, not with a friend, not with a wife, not with a colleague, but they need to have a conversation. And it's funny because I said to this person, I said, why? What do you need to go and have a chat? And she said, I just need to have a chat.
Yeah.
I just need to sort stuff out. I got too much going on. I need to sort stuff out. And I thought, good on you.
They need somewhere to come and think straight.
Yeah.
So just on that note, James, I know I've said it before, but I'm really pleased that there are so many people now coming forward for the mental health checkup. And contrary to what people think, so many men are coming forward for a mental health checkup. And just as you're saying, so many guys are reaching a point, they just think, I need to go and talk to somebody. I can't keep shouting or staying silent at home or complaining at work. And they're really good. They're getting a lot out of coming for their mental health checkup.
It's funny, isn't it? Because it's the little things that just start to pile, because this is what you do. So tell me if I'm nailing it. Yeah. But it's the little things that pile up. And then what happens? Oh, you start having arguments with your spouse. You start being short with your kids. Maybe you get physical, and let's hope not, but I know that people do.
Yeah.
And that's like the instant, that's the bell that's going off. It's like, back off. I need to go get help like now. And also just, these things can just start to pile up because there's a trigger, and it's that needle in a haystack situation where the thing that makes you snap, and finally it's, well, that's the straw that broke the camel's back. But that's not the thing at all that's got it going. It could be, you're not getting paid enough. It could be that you miss your parents. It could be that you've had a death in the family and you haven't dealt with the grief. All these things add up, and next thing you know, you're a mess. Completely.
I think it's exactly that. I think for lots of people, they stop sleeping, they're not eating properly, they're feeling anxious. And there's so many things. I often liken it to like driving in a snowstorm. They've got so much coming at them, or here in a sandstorm maybe is probably it's a better analogy. And they're just really resilient. They're used to being resilient. But sooner or later, there's something, like you said, the straw that breaks the camel's back, and it can often be something minor. A road rage incident, I think, is a classic one.
I see those all the time.
A meltdown in the office is another one.
You said something interesting that I've never picked up on before, and I'm curious, because I could be totally wrong. Are men less likely to come through the door than women?
Men are less likely to, absolutely. Okay. So a lot of men don't emote, so they tend to internalize their emotions more.
Men don't have these feelings.
Well, men actually, paradoxically, contrary to what people think, men are actually really emotional, but they're socialized not to express their emotions, and so they're encouraged to be really manly all the time and not show that they're upset about
I'm
something.
watching This Is Us. I'm the one who's got the full tears going down. My wife's looking over. Are you serious? Are you really serious? I mean, I'll be in the movies and I say, you got any Kleenex? She's going, what's making you cry in this movie? It's just sad.
Yeah, well, you're obviously one of those that are really in touch and don't feel don't feel embarrassed to cry or express their feelings. But a lot of men don't feel comfortable doing that.
That's not healthy.
Yeah, and it's really important that men do come forward for help earlier if they can, because once they get into an anxiety or depressive loop, it can spiral out of control so much quicker. And most men that are kind of depressed are usually the guy that's really grumpy all the time.
Okay, we know those guys.
Yes, moody, irritable, not speaking very much. But that's it. A lot of guys don't come forward. But what I'm seeing in Dubai, which is quite interesting, I'd say at least 50% or more of my caseload currently is men.
Wow.
And that's really good. And that's really unusual. Yeah.
They've recently, so I'm at Side University, I'm there by day. We've recently started a whole new program through, and I'm not quite sure who spearheads it on campus, but it's all about mental health. And there are essentially now a group of people who help employees, help students, help faculty to understand if they need to go and get some counseling. So there's sort of like the pre-counseling step where someone can just come and have a chat, and they're not counseling, but they're helping them to go through a little bit of a checklist, and it's anonymous, and it's just a group of folks who've been identified as, I think that maybe they're called gatekeepers, or there's some name.
Mental health gatekeepers.
I think that's how they're referred to, and they go through some training. There's some great training that they're doing just to help them to, and I guess part of it's to be proactive. And if you're working with someone, and go have a coffee and say, look, I don't want to overstep, but how are things going?
Yeah, that's a really good idea. Is that within the faculties then? So
it's within the university, and it's across the university. So it's not just faculty members doing it. In fact, I think probably faculty members are not the most involved group of people at that stage. It's other folks.
Brilliant.
And then they've got
advanced.
it happening for students as well. So you've got a group of students who are doing this with students.
That is amazing.
It's really incredible.
Really good. Yeah.
So they're really, I think, cognizant of post-COVID and change and things. I guess the sad thing is, the scary thing is, COVID is working its way through, but so many different parts of the world. It's in so many different stages.
Absolutely.
And we went from one type of world to a rapid change in our travel, in our shopping, and the way we're educated, and we're not going back.
Yeah.
I mean, we might go back to some things, but we're not going back. We're not just resetting the clock and saying, okay, it's 2018, we're doing it 2018 style now. It's like, we're not going to do that anymore.
No, the world has changed.
Yeah, I don't think people are ready for it. We don't change fast.
Humans don't like change very much, but I guess the biggest place that change is going to happen and is happening is in the place of work for so many people. Yeah.
Which one of the questions that you brought up, and it's interesting because we sat down and it was, okay, so where are we going with this? And it was like, well, I'd sent you a couple ideas and then we just started talking about the mass resignation, or it's talked about in the papers. Are we going to see people who are just going to resign? And in fact, Mariana, who I was just speaking with, go and listen to that podcast and catching up, by the way. She's talking Toastmasters, she's talking her career in the corporate rat race, and she's talking about the book she wrote as a stay-at-home mom. And when she had to transition from this career woman to the stay-at-home mom and go through the depression of losing what she felt was her identity, which I guess so many people do, until she realized, and it's her therapist she was talking about, and she said her therapist said to her, Mariana, you're not really that special. Because she said, well, I've got the Prada and I do this and I'm the boss woman. And she goes, you're really not that special.
Yeah.
And as soon as she realized that, for her, that was a huge release. It was like, you're right. I'm me, and I don't have to be that, and I'm gonna do the new me. And as soon as she took off the cape from the super corporate woman and put on the super new me,
being herself.
Totally different vibe.
Yeah, because so many people are defined by their corporate title.
She said the purses, the cars,
the
shoes.
Exactly.
That wasn't defined her.
It's the opener at dinner, who you are, where you work, what your status is.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people are turning away from that. I think that's one of the really interesting things about the pandemic. And
do you get those people coming to you who they've got some issues, and then you're talking and it's like, well, do you need to be doing that?
I think increasingly seeing people who question their role in the corporate world. I think there's a lot of people asking if this is the direction they want to continue in. And is the corporate world really giving them what they hoped for? Because a lot of people worked incredibly hard. They've done amazing at school. They've got into some of the best universities, and they get to work for an amazing company only to start to feel overworked, undervalued, not able to really make the contribution they were hoping to. And a lot of people, especially people in their 30s and early 40s, I would say, really, I'm seeing increasingly questioning whether they want to continue with that or whether they want to just branch out and do something themselves and have more of a say over the direction of play of their life.
This is such an interesting conversation because, and the reason I bring it up is just fortuitously as you're talking about this. I mean, this could be more. This is such a perfect segue.
Okay. Tell me.
I've also been connecting with a few people on LinkedIn who I've known from their careers here in the UAE, and in one way or another, we've worked together. And they've left those positions and they've gone on to do other things. And what I've noticed is that in every single case, when they had the traumatic moment of leaving their position here in Dubai and going through some form of depression, and then settling into what it is they really want to do, there's this huge awakening, and this group of people are talking about that. And they're talking about, I was defined by this, but really they've taken elements of those skills from what they were defined by, and they've repackaged it to what they really want to do. And they're successful. They're happy. And how do we define success becomes a really interesting thing, because I don't know if they're successful monetarily, if you want to define it like that. Hey, they're able to live and they're able to keep doing what they want to do, and they're smiling. So I'm thinking, well, they can at least eat and pay their rent. And that sounds like success to me.
And a lot of people are really happy with that. I think what increasingly people are thinking, okay, I can take a pay cut because I've got so much more free time, and I can define my time. I can define my working hours however I want, and the bills are still being paid. Nothing drastic has really happened. I know quite a lot of people want to keep Dubai as their base, but they're traveling off to other places. They're happy to do some of their work from Thailand or Bali or South Africa or back in the UK and then coming back here. And I think lots and lots of people are beginning to wake up to this idea that there's a different way that they can earn a living and have a life.
How difficult is it, do you find, for people to reconcile with that? Because we're so caught, our whole identity is set up around that 9 to 5 or 8 to 5, 8 to 8 agenda, and go, and KPIs and promotions, and start again.
Well, I don't want to,
So you're being very general here.
No, let me take a step back, because I was going to answer this question in a bit of a roundabout way. But
I love it.
The world of work is changing. So just like the pandemic has been a catalyst for a lot of change, but rather like the Industrial Revolution, whenever that was in the UK in the 1800s, the world of work is going to change. And we've been talking for a long time in the world of work about people really needing to look at their lives and develop more hobbies and interests and leisure activities, because with the increase of technology, and particularly AI, that will be taking over quite a lot of the way in which we work in the next decade or so, people will not be required to work in the way that they have been working. So lots of things will change, even in corporate structures. People will not be needed in quite the same way because they will be replaced by other systems.
That's hard.
Well, that's
when you start hearing
I don't
that.
think that's negative. I actually think that's healthy, because I think people have become too defined by work. I think there are all sorts. If we look at some of the data on the increase in things like depression and anxiety, panic attacks, and then some of the social problems like loneliness, a lot of that is to do with the world of work. People are working far too hard and don't have time for much else. You meet some people that are literally doing 14 hours a day, 16-hour days. They're traveling non-stop. It's not sustainable. People worry that, they're not strong enough. I'm not resilient enough. I should be able to do this. And I'm sorry, but just like the therapist said, I'm sorry, but you're just human.
Yeah.
You're just a human being, and human beings need to sleep and they need to eat, and they need people. Yeah.
Cheryl, is part of the problem though, when we're talking with folks who are saying, all of those things, but they're looking at that other person who's got a totally different group of things going on in their life, and they're saying, yeah, but he does it or she does it. I've got to be able to do like him or her, or I'm not as good, and I can't show weakness.
Well, I think that's it. People get caught up in competing. Like, you've got to be on the rat race. Like, you've got to get to the next level, and the next level, and the next level, and the next level, and you've got to be.
I think corporate world imposes that. We're constantly graded because you can only have one top earner, you can only have one top salesman or woman, one top executive.
Yeah.
So someone's going to be the loser, and everyone wants to be that. So yeah, we're a team, but we're working against each other inside.
And it's a bit of, I don't know, sometimes I have to sort of break the bad news to people, is that, there are Olympic athletes, there are Olympic level athletes, and, you can still enjoy running, but you may never be Usain Bolt. So,
right. Yeah.
And I think that's something you have to come to terms with in the corporate world. There will be people who are super talented and have everything that is required to be like an Olympian in the corporate world. And lots of people will be amazing at what they do, but they'll never reach that level. And I think part of the process of adjustment in the workplace is perhaps having to come to terms with, where your level will be.
How do we do that? Like, where do I start? I agree with what you're saying, and I'm listening to you and I'm going, okay, yeah. And so the first question in my mind is, okay, obviously it's a long process, but what's the first thing I should start doing to start myself down that path?
I think there has to be a level of acceptance. There has to be an acceptance of the reality of life. And the reality of life is that there are some people that will have certain attributes that will make them successful in certain environments. And that could be, it could be the corporate world, it could be the army, it could be physical sports. There will always be people who have what it takes to succeed in specific environments, and some people will have enough talents and skills to compete at a good level within those structures.
That's the pentathlon in the Olympics.
Yes,
they're the all-rounders.
There's the all-rounders, but they will never be the top person. And I think a part of maturing in life is an acceptance of who you are, without that making you a loser, or making you feel that you don't have anything worthwhile to contribute to where you're working.
I wonder if it's almost, when I'm listening to what you're saying, it's almost like there are things, we're all good at things, and we all might be the best at something in our group, yet I'm really good at this. Oh yeah, but he's really good at that and that. And it's like, no, you know what? Yeah, he's really good at that, but you're really good at this.
Yes, absolutely.
Celebrate what you're really good at. Stop looking over there and just start telling yourself that I'm really good at this. And when someone says you're really good at it, take that on and love it.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I think so many people are caught in this thing, but yeah, you're really amazing at this. You really bring a lot to work at what you do in this at this. But people then think, yeah, but if I just accept this, then I'm just settling and I'm not fulfilling my potential, and therefore I'm not good enough. And hence the downward loop into feeling quite depressed about themselves.
Is that just us generating that for ourselves? Just self, destruction? We just don't trust ourselves? We don't trust the comments that are coming from people when they say that?
I think people, it's so competitive in the world now. Everyone thinks you have to be on your A game all the time. You have to be the perfect.
I am on my A game all the time.
Well, you do have to be on your A game, but what I mean is, I think.
I get it. Hey, look.
I think lots of people can't find it difficult to accept a level, because even if you say that, people think then you're suggesting that they're not good enough, and that's absolutely not that.
There are days when I've gone into the classroom, and I'll say to my students, I don't usually tell them when it's not my A game day, but I tell them I'm coming in with my A game, and there are days I've gone in and I've just gone, this hasn't been my A game day.
Yeah.
And do the students notice? Maybe. I notice, and and I just kind of sit there for a minute and I say, okay, what went wrong today? And it usually has nothing to do with the class. It has something to do with me. It's like, oh, I got this phone call and they wanted me to do something. And the whole class, my mind was only thinking of that phone call, or something's going on with my kids. And all I'm thinking about is my kids. And man, I need to be back in Canada for my kids. And I'm here with these kids and they're not my kids. And it's got nothing to do with that moment.
Absolutely.
Yet I can still pull off the A game, and as far as everyone's concerned, I'm doing a really good job, and I'm just happy with that.
Yeah, but that's great that you can feel that. But lots of people are stuck in feeling that that's not good enough because you're on your A game, doing your best. But for so many people, they feel that is a sign they should be further up the food chain, wherever that might be in whichever organisation they're working for.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is tough.
It's really tough. It's also self-destructive.
Well, that keeps us bringing us back. It's almost like that's why you need to get a 6-month checkup to see if you're engaging in self-destructive thoughts and motions, because it's just not sustainable.
Yeah, I think lots of people are now defined by their job. That is it. But if you remove your job title, who are you? This is the mystical question. But
let's get out the Ouija board. We're going to do some Ouija here.
This is the existential question, but I think it is.
Yes, who are you?
Who are you? If you're not this and you're not doing these 16-hour days, then who are you? If you're not your degree and you're not your is it the American system, your GPA? Because I think people define themselves increasingly by what scores they got at school and what they got at university and which company they got in and which level they made it in within the company and how much they got paid. And then you think, but who are you? So that's good. I know all about your job, but introduce me to you. Who are you?
People can't do that. I mean, I
think increasingly people find that difficult.
It's kind of scary when you strip everything away. So who are you?
Yeah.
It's like, whoa. It's funny because I just use this as therapy for myself.
All right.
But it's
go on, James. Hit me.
No, but it's funny when I meet people and say, so tell me about yourself, and I often talk about kombucha and juicing and composting, and more recently sound therapy. And then they'll go, but you're a professor, right? Oh yeah. I know. I also, but those things are what I do as employment. Yeah. But I really think I'm defined by these other things. And
absolutely.
And then for me as that person, and then as I'm thinking about what we're talking about, I think, man, this is difficult because there's a huge pull. Dr. James Pikeway, professor of associate professor of communication, versus James, the kombucha guy, or the compost.
Sounds so much more interesting, the kombucha guy.
Or what my more recent one is the sound therapy training that I'm doing, and it's just like every time I come back from taking this course, I must
try that actually. The bowls. Yes, I've seen it.
And so I'm literally taking sound therapy training to, and look, there's multiple levels, and those who are yoga aficionados and chakra folks, and hey, you know what? There's a lot to be thought about here. For me, it's just deep relaxation. Yeah. And a number of different, as Marco would say, Marco Zigon, amazing guy.
Really?
And
here in the UAE?
He's in Quain.
Okay.
And he does come to Dubai, but he teaches out of Quain. And the ability to use these vibrations to get us to relax are incredible. And for me, that's it. I'm so interested in deep body relaxation so that we can just think and get away from all of these things that are on our minds just for a minute, so that when I'm done, I can sort of say, okay, now let's have a talk.
Yeah.
And
it releases tension.
Oh, and the crazy thing, and this is, I feel almost selfish when I take these lessons, because it's really about me being the giver and someone receiving as I help them with these bowls. But I leave the whole process very invigorated and also very, in a sense, relaxed as well. And so, my wife tends to be my patient now, as I just need lots of practice and friends and things. But I find I get so much benefit from it, and it's just so different than the definition that's typically put out there of who's James.
Yeah.
And I like this other definition better.
Yes.
Honestly, I just find it much more rewarding.
It speaks more about who you are. Like, for example, I never talk about my job outside of work.
Yeah, me neither.
Unless I'm with other psychologists, for example. Then
I never hang out with. So we're like that. You probably don't hang out with too many other psychologists.
I generally don't. But people know that I'm a psychologist. But most people that know me, that are my friends, they don't have really any idea about what I do for a living. I mean, they know what I do, but I just don't talk about work away from work, and I try not to be defined as a psychologist outside of my work. So when I'm at work, I'm really in my role, and I really love what I do, and I'm passionate about it. But actually, I've always been really careful not to be defined by that in my social group.
Do you think that's where people go wrong? Is that they literally take work home with them, and that
I think it becomes people's identity. I think it's that. I think it really helps people feel they know who they are. If they are a lawyer, or they're this, or they're that, and that is the main topic of conversation.
Until you lose that job.
Until you lose the job.
then those people are also knocking on your door because, well, I'm a lawyer and I'm not a lawyer anymore.
Yeah, and that's actually a huge one that I see, is when people lose their job or at the point of retirement. Lots of people struggle with loss of identity. Yeah, like, I worked for this company and I was so-and-so in this company, and now who am I? I've got nothing to do all day. Like, my kids don't know me. I can't find anything in the house. I don't know how to make myself a coffee because I don't know where to find anything. Like, they've become so disconnected that it causes a bit of an identity crisis.
A bit. It sounds. I mean, that's a huge one. I mean, you always hear the stories of this person who retired and then 2 years later they died.
Yes.
Because they just didn't know what to do.
There's some scary statistics on what happens when people retire, I'm afraid. Maybe that's another subject.
Yeah, I think so.
People have to be careful, because if you work really, really hard and then you retire, your life expectancy is not that high. So people really, and I think actually what I love is every generation brings something, doesn't it? But the younger generation, I think people in their 20s, late 20s, early 30s, they are really doing things differently. They are not going to kill themselves in these 90-hour weeks.
No, what's in it for me?
What's in it for me, I think, is completely and utterly is the new mindset. Is like, is this working for me? And if it's not working for me, then I'm not staying. And increasingly,
you're going to make a lot of money. Yeah, but do I really need all that money? It's like, it's not worth it.
A lot of young people are not that bothered. What they've discovered is they can live somewhere halfway decent, they can pay their rent, they can see their friends, they can surf, or they can go mountain climbing, and they can still make a living. Then they're happy with that. So they're highly educated, they're very capable, they're very tech savvy, and I think there is a whole change in the way that young people work, and it is actually really quite invigorating to watch that.
No, it's exciting, and I've met those young people who, they're doing great jobs, but they don't pay particularly well. I mean, they pay enough they pay the rent and they pay the toys and things, but you wouldn't look at what they're doing and say they're going to get rich, however we define that. But that's
people are redefining wealth, aren't they? Like, I was talking to somebody recently who just left the corporate world, and
it's like every time they walk out the door, you need to have the confetti cannons.
And they made a lot of money. I think they're 33, and they're earning an amount of money that's crazy. But actually, they're redefining wealth is that they'd rather wake up in, I think it was either Bali or Thailand, one of those anyway. And because they got enough money, and wealth for them is getting up and being able to surf.
There you go.
That's it. It's
probably in Bali.
Yeah, probably Bali. I think it might have been that. That is the redefinition of wealth, that they got more than enough to live on, but they don't want to live their life, get to 50 and think, I spent all of my hours sitting in an office.
And now I've got bad knees and I can't surf, but I can see.
I think that's it, actually,
That happens to so many people. I remember talking to someone who's, in their 80s, and they were talking about this whole idea of getting on in their age, and because they're older, they've sold a lot of their assets, and they have a fair amount of cash. But they can't do anything with it. So all of the things you'd like to do when you're our age, It's like, yeah, well, I'm going to go on a trip around the world, or I'm going to take this big long vacation. They can't do it anymore because they're not mobile as they used to be. And if you've got to walk on uneven surfaces and things, and you're much older in that sense, and you don't want to have necessarily mobility aids. That's the politically correct term now. Mobility aids. I heard that the other day. I said mobility aids. I like that. Okay. But if they don't want to have those things, or if you're feeling awkward about using those things when you're traveling, you're done. You can't travel.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting as the world moves more towards, all of this mindfulness, and people are embracing some...
There's a lot of mindfulness going on.
Buddhist philosophies and various things like that. A lot of people are just thinking, I'm going to live in the moment. I'm just going to enjoy my life in the moment. And I'm not going to keep obsessing and worrying about having a pile at 60, which, as you say, I think they've had parents or relatives that have got to that age and really have not been able to enjoy it. They haven't done very much.
No.
Yeah, including move very much.
I think we had our, I'm getting up there in age, right? And get the finance guy. Talking to the finance guy, and we're having a chat, and he's the guy who's putting on. He's like, we need to start talking about this, and I'm kind of going, really? I mean, he goes, no, we really need to, and I'm going, it's gonna be okay. And he's going, let's have a serious talk though, okay? And I'm going, okay, it's gonna be okay. And he goes, it's not that far away, James. You're not getting it, and we're about the same age, and we're not getting any younger, man. It's take a look at the calendar. It's just be mindful of that.
But that's panic stations retirement, though, isn't it? Because I think
that's what he doesn't want us to be. He says, I don't want you to wake up on the cusp of retiring and be panicking. So I just want you to be thinking now. And have you thought what you're going to do? And have you thought where you want to be? And have you thought about all these things? And I went, why would I be thinking about that? I mean, I'm young. And he's going, you were young when you moved to the UAE 22 years ago.
You're young at heart.
You're not as young as you think you are. And I went, yeah, I guess you're right. And he says, I just don't want you to panic. It's like, okay, good. So, a little conversation, and there's a plan. And I go, plan's good for me.
Yeah, and I think plans are good and pensions are good, but equally you do have a life to live. And I think the other thing is lots of people in the West are choosing to retire in cheaper places. So I think in the US, so many older people are retiring to Mexico, where they can have an amazing life.
Panama, Costa Rica, baby.
Yeah, Panama, Costa Rica, Mexico.
Yeah.
And then I think other people in Europe, they're going to places like the Philippines, Thailand,
Yeah, I'm
Bali.
thinking that too. I'm thinking, well, how old are my kids? Maybe Thailand's going to be 6 months in Thailand, 6 months in Canada.
India's another place where people can just retire and live really comfortable lives.
We're just got good health care and easy repatriation if there's an emergency. That's all I'm looking at.
Exactly.
I don't like snow, so.
Yeah, and in many of these countries, they've got great health. They've got great doctors. If you go to India or somewhere, you're not going to be short on a good doctor, a good dentist.
Exactly.
So I think the whole world of work is beginning to change, and people's ideas about, I think we've been locked into panic for far too long, haven't we? And
it gets into your head, isn't it?
These imperatives, you must own a house, and you must have a car, and you must have this, and you must have a pension, and you must...
I don't own a house. People always look at me and say, well, you have a house back in Canada. Yeah, no, that's actually one of the problems for me when people say, oh, you're going to go move back to Canada. I said, Canada's 5,700 kilometers across.
Yeah.
And an equal number if you go north, which I was just listening today about a place up north that's 100 kilometers above the North Pole. Sounds really beautiful, fly in only.
Oh, right.
I think I might have got that wrong. But anyway, it's the most northerly town in Canada. That sounded amazing.
Really?
Yeah, it sounded really
cold.
Cool. Yeah, it'd be freezing. But at some time of the year.
Yeah.
But this is for me, again, a little bit of a head trip where, because people say, well, you must own a house. I said, actually, I don't. Oh. They said, oh, you must own property. I said, no, I don't own property either. I literally don't own any real estate in Canada. And they go, well, where are you going to live? I go, that's the problem. It's not physically, am I going to live in a house or that? And basically, my wife and I look at it and we go, we're not going to own property. It's just not possible. I mean, when you look at buying something and age and this, and it's like, it's not going to amortize over the period of time. It just doesn't make sense. I'm not going to get the benefit of getting that mortgage, and unless you get somewhere and get really lucky, but it's not going to happen. So for me, it becomes, okay, so I'll be a renter or whatever. But again, when people say, where are you going to go back to Canada? I say, I don't know. This is the problem. I mean, I know where I, quite frankly, don't want to live, but where would I move to? I don't have that anchor where so many people I know say, well, yeah, we own a house in this town or in that town or in this place or in that place. I don't have that anchor. And that's terrible. I mean, it's mentally, it's like I'm astray.
Is it terrifying, or is it that you've liberated yourself and that you and your wife could technically
that's the other
choose
thing.
to live anywhere in Canada if you chose to? And
it
will be okay.
I think we've come to the liberation phase where literally we could live anywhere.
You could live anywhere, and that's quite exciting in whatever form that is. A tiny house.
I'm thinking tiny house.
I think tiny houses are really interesting.
And it's funny, right? Because that's become this big en vogue thing, the tiny houses.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen how people live in Japan?
Yeah.
Unless you're living out in the countryside, even those houses aren't very big, which is an interesting thing too, because those houses amortize down to zero. So when some old Japanese folk is living in Kyoto in this property in these houses, by the time they're 80 years old, the house is worth nothing.
Yeah.
And they tear them down. They tear them down.
Really?
Yeah. They tear them down when they're done. And so I got a friend who...
That's interesting, I didn't know that.
And so I got a friend who lives out there in a property, and they were tearing down the house beside him. He said, perfectly good house. And he wanted to go in and do some salvaging, and they said, no, you can't do it.
Why?
They just don't do it. That's the whole thing. It's just part of the culture. They just tear them down and build something new.
Or somebody will build on that side.
Probably, yeah. They sell the property and build something new there and start afresh. And then...
That's quite an exciting idea.
It's kind of weird, It's interesting. And I just thought, wow. But yeah.
So that's the next thing, becoming less attached to things. I think that's as well, again, the younger people are becoming less attached to things and thinking, actually, you know what? I've got a house, it's a tiny house, but it's got everything in it I need. And I'm a minimalist, I don't need loads of stuff anymore. So I think there is a lot of change going on.
I think it's exciting.
It's quite exciting.
It's exciting but the problem is, and I guess this is where we constantly run into it, is getting our minds, so that the young are already there.
Older people are less so.
And then you got some people who are never going to get there. And then you've got this middle group who are in the cusp of all this change, and it's changing around them, and they could resist or they could go with it. They're still defined by their job, but they probably don't need to be defined by their job. It just racks your brain.
Well, a lot of people are defined by their job and their status and the things, where they live, the car they drive.
Got the Tiffany bracelet on.
The Tiffany bracelet, the Rolex watch, the job title they have.
Yeah.
And you respect to people who want this for themselves, but I think you walk a bit of a dangerous path if you really believe that defines you as a human being. Because all of these things can go tomorrow, and I think that's when people live with a certain belief that the job will go on forever. But the world markets are changing rapidly, and you can lose your job quite quickly these days.
And it's everywhere. It's schools, things, and we were talking about universities, but I see it here in the UAE. Let's talk about schools. That works for a second. Where I read something the other day where a high school was closing now.
I've heard that quite a few schools have closed.
And in my mind, schools don't close. They only close when there's no kids, and you're now living in an area where there's no children anymore to go to school. But schools don't close. It's a future-proof industry. No, it's not.
Yeah.
It's like, I think for teachers and educators, suddenly it's like, you mean I could lose my job because my school's going to close? Like, how's that possible?
Yeah, schools are closing.
Yeah.
What do you think that's about? Are you thinking, I guess my hunch, is that about either people leaving, or is it people choosing homeschooling as a result of the pandemic?
I think
that's the other thing I've heard people saying.
I think there's people leaving. I think there's people picking different ways to educate.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of schools are premised on a return on investment. And when people leave and decide to homeschool, they're no longer getting that return on investment and that horizon of investment. And then they just go, look, we can't make a go of this business. And so they're just cutting their losses.
That's interesting.
And so I think it's really a perfect storm of things that happened. But it's, you can only cut back so much on a school. So, okay, well, we're not going to invest as much in the library. Okay, we're not going to invest as much in IT. Oh, no, now we're not going to invest as much in bringing in new teachers. Before, no one's going to come to your school because they're going to say, well, I might as well be homeschooling.
Yeah, and I've heard of that, teachers losing their job and being, it's quite interesting, isn't it?
It's like, again,
I think in the UK that doesn't
future-proof.
happen, yeah.
No, it's like, so this again.
There's plenty of jobs in the UK. If you're a teacher, listen up, you can get a job in the UK.
So it becomes, again, that then plays with someone's, I thought my job was going to last. Or if you're, I've heard people working at accounting firms, where they get the call in, and we got to downsize by 10% of our staff, and they get a call in the morning to the boardroom and says, oh, you don't have a job anymore. Here's the payout, and thank you. It's like, what do you mean? I'm an accountant. This job doesn't end. It's like, yeah, well, it just ended. Yeah,
I remember, on that subject of things happening quickly, because I remember when Lehman Brothers, the bank went down, because I used to come through Canary Wharf every day, and I will never forget Lehman Brothers. So every morning you'd see fleets of Mercedes arriving and these executives getting out of the cars, and the building was beautiful. And then I think it was the 2008 crash happened, and then coming back from work, seeing hundreds of Lehman staff walking out with boxes and bags with their stuff, and that was it. It was over.
Can you imagine?
And that was happening all over the city. People with these, golden jobs were suddenly without work. It just happened overnight.
And it happens in all industries.
It happens in all industries.
I remember when you talk about oil and gas industry in Canada and Calgary, Alberta, there was a phase where a lot of the oil companies, especially when the price got to a point where it's unaffordable to pull the stuff out of the ground in Canada, you got these oil and gas industry execs who, or not just the execs, the folks who were on the ground, drillers and pipe fitters and et cetera, who had built a life on petrochemicals, man. We need oil. Everyone needs oil. Prices are just skyrocketing. We're in la la land here. Yeah. And then prices tank, and suddenly, well, we don't need you anymore. Yeah. And you go, yeah, but I got a house, and I got a car, and I got a mortgage, and I got 3 kids going to school, and yeah, well, you don't have a job. And suddenly it's like, whoa.
And this is how I got interested in the world of work, actually, just because I grew up in a part of England in the north where so many industries went. Coal mining went, chemicals went, these things, the ship works, people that worked in the shipyards, all of those went. So there was a decimation over like a 25-year period where people went from having really well-paid jobs and served apprenticeships to literally nothing.
And just depression. That's just the mentality. Forget the depression of the economy, the depression of the people.
The depression of the people, absolutely. It just changed people so dramatically because they went from having an identity and a pride in the goods and services that they produced to having nothing.
Imagine a family where my grandfather worked in the shipbuilding industry, my father worked, I'm going to work, and my son's going to work.
Exactly.
And my daughter's going to work in the shipbuilding industry, and we closed the shipyard.
That's it. That's exactly what happened. You'd have several generations of platers and different things like that. They took such pride in the work that they did in their craftsmanship, and they knew that they were considered the best in the world. And overnight those industries just went, and I think that's how I really started to become interested in work and the psychological impact of of work, the meaning, when you've got a good job, how that really helps your psychological well-being, and how psychological well-being can be so affected by loss of meaningful employment. And what we saw in that part of the world is jobs being replaced, I'm sorry to say this, but by these highly skilled people having to go and work in McDonald's, for example, and going from having meaningful work to jobs to make money, and how that affects your psychological well-being too.
Well, sure, because
if it's not meaningful work.
I'm doing this great job, and I go and buy my burger at lunch, and I would look at the guy who's working there, and I'm poor sucker.
I think it's not that they disrespect the people that work at McDonald's, but what it was is just. But hold on, I'm a highly skilled
that's it. I didn't
electrician
mean it,
or something like that.
And I didn't mean it in disrespect. It's just like, well, on the scale of jobs, I'm up here, and that person who's running the cash and flipping burgers, they're building their way up, and they're starting off in their career.
It's a start-off job.
It's a student job. It's a start-off job. It's it's
a job in a uniform that they felt ridiculous then, and these jobs obviously. to use a term they would use in England, quite working class industries,
yeah.
but they were very well paid. So that also meant that the economy and the towns in which they lived in did really well. And so they were used to having good amounts of money. And so self-esteem was good and various things like that. And I guess we're seeing that more and more in corporate world, is that it's unstable, and people shouldn't imagine that they're going to have a job for 20 years in the same company anymore, because that's the other thing that's changed. People used to be company guys, didn't they? People worked for the same company from the day they graduated university to the day they retired.
I'm kind of in that position where it's kind of weird, because I've been in the same company for 21 years. Yet around me, there's 3 of us who've been in where I work, in my specific unit, who've been there for this length of time. I'm the one who's been there in of the oldies the least amount of time at 21 years.
Wow.
And there's 2 people who've been there a little longer than me.
Yeah, but I think that's a good thing.
Well, it's a good thing, but I'm around people who filter in and out. 3 years, 4 years, 3 years. They come and they go.
Yeah.
And it's almost like that's the norm. 3 years, 4 years, where you don't know how to deal with the people who've been there for 20 plus years. Suddenly it's like, well, you've been here 20 years? It's like, yeah. And it's like, okay, I don't know what to say.
The secret is low staff turnover is a good thing. You kind of want to be able to retain the talent that you've employed, and I think that's the big issue now, is that companies cannot retain the talent that they've recruited, is that people are just moving really quickly.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, it's tough.
Do you think the big resignation is going to happen, or it's happening? Do you think people are,
I think a lot of...
I like that, you're just emphatic,
I think it will happen, because a lot of young people are just they're not prepared to accept the way their parents worked. And lots of people will say, my mum was amazing, my dad was amazing, but they worked really long hours. We didn't see them very much. And I'm so grateful, because without them we wouldn't have gone to this school or done these things. But I just want it to be a bit different for me. I just want to have a bit more life-work balance.
I remember that with my parents. My dad would be gone. He'd leave, porridge or cream of wheat on the stove.
Yeah.
He was gone. We'd wake up, he's gone.
Yeah.
We wouldn't get home till 7 at night.
That's it.
We'd be waiting. Dinner or whatever, we'd be doing homework, but we subconsciously I'm waiting to hear him drive in the driveway and say, hey Dad, how's it going? And then not thinking until, today, going, man, he must have been dead tired.
Yeah.
And all I want to do is talk his ear off and show him my schoolwork, and hey, I've got to go to the pool. Do you want to drive me to the pool because I got to do this? And just going, I just want to sit down and do nothing.
Yeah, I think that's it. People had tired parents, and now what happened is you've now got both mum and dad probably both working in competitive jobs and coming home both tired.
Yeah, I'm going, oh, that doesn't work.
Yeah, so I think the great resignation with the pandemic, I definitely think lots of people enjoyed being at home and having that work and having time for their kids.
Yeah.
And just thinking, actually, we can accept less. We'll move out of our expensive apartment, wherever that might be, in Manhattan or London or somewhere, and we can go and live somewhere in the countryside for a fraction of the price, and we can cut our costs and have a really good life. So I think
it's coming.
Yeah, and then you're talking about kombucha and everything. I know certainly in the UK, and I think it's happening in other parts of the world, lots of people now are getting back to wanting to have some land to grow their own vegetables and different things like that. So I think people are looking...
Live a little healthier.
Live a little healthier, live off the land a little bit more. So I think those things are happening. And that's a good thing. Yeah. Maybe then it creates a balance, and you get rid of lots of people who would just maybe not always being as productive as they could be in the workplace because they're bored and not that motivated. And so maybe organisations will then attract people that is their dream, people that really want to make it in that world.
Maybe this whole pandemic, on the bad side, some scary numbers of the number of people who've lost their lives. Yeah. But the other side, it's forcing us to rethink about how we define ourselves with our careers, what we want from our careers, and what it's worth to us.
Absolutely. What's the value of my life? I think that's what lots of people are. What is the value of my life? And if I really value my life, am I living my best life? Is this really the best that I can create for myself?
And sometimes you need to have a chat with someone like yourself.
Yeah.
Cheryl Warsama.
Thanks.
But absolutely.
Yeah.
You know what? This has been a lot of fun, Cheryl.
Yeah.
As always.
Okay.
I'm gonna stop it right there.
Okay.
And we're gonna schedule in a repeat visit.
Okay,
So
thank
we
you.
can talk
Great
about
to
this.
talk to you as always, Jane.
Viva Mas is where you are. And,
Yeah.
and I love what you said at the start. I said, look, it's not about coming to see you.
Yeah,
But
see a psychologist. There's a really good psychologist in Dubai, so just find someone that you feel would fit with you and go and talk to them and have your mental health checkup.
there we go. It's the same message. I love it. Cheryl Warsama joining us here on the podcast.